What's up guys, and welcome back to another video on the MF Automotive YouTube channel, and today I bring you a review on the 2022 Grand Cherokee 5-passenger Summit Reserve. Yup, the king of the Grand Cherokee lineup, and I might add a new trim level for this generation, because apparently, and this is what I think anyway, Summit just didn't sound opulent enough, so they had to slip in the Reserve moniker just for the extra little bit of kick. But really, in all seriousness, once you see the interior, I think you'll tend to agree with me that it is quite deserving of the extra addition. However, there are just a few places where I feel Jeep may have added some improvements, especially considering the price tag on this thing, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, who do we have to thank for today's review? Of course, the awesome folks over at Dixie Chrysler, who were incredibly kind and gracious enough, and especially the vendor. So if you are, please be amazing and check out their website provided in the description box below. With that, back to the review. The 2022 model year signifies the 5th generation of the new Grand Cherokee, which first started production back in '92 and was known to Jeep fanatics as the chassis code WK. Fast forward nearly 3 decades, and not only is this new generation now known as the WL, it's also the first generation ever to offer a third row of seats, now known unambiguously as the Grand Cherokee L. Regardless, with that brief history lesson over, let us talk about trim levels, which the Grand Cherokee can be had in 6 different ones here in Canada and 7 across the border. The base goes by the name Laredo and starts at just over $50,000 Canadian, while the aforementioned Summit Reserve sits at the very top and starts at nearly 80,000 Canadian dollars. Quite a lot of money if you ask me, and that's not even the end of it. There are still a few packages you can add to the vehicle, easily bring it near that $90,000 mark. That brings it dangerously close to German competition. Across the border, trim levels follow the same sequence with the exception of an additional trim level known as the Trailhawk, which is a more off-road oriented model. Pricing also differs, obviously, with the Laredo starting at nearly $39,000 USD and the Summit Reserve at just over $65,000 USD in the States. There are also packaging differences between each country and each region. For example, the Grand Cherokee can be had in a 2-wheel drive configuration in the States, but in Canada, it can only be had as all-wheel drive. But if you do decide to opt for the base level or the entry-level trim, it's not as bad as you think. You still got some awesome features, such as a 10.25-inch gauge cluster, an 8.4-inch infotainment display, heated front seats, and a heated wheel, blind spot monitoring with rear cross traffic alert, and a whole host of driver assist features. I always preach this, and I'm not saying I'm the pioneer of this, but I always say that in this day and age, getting a base model vehicle is really not bad at all. It's not like 10 years ago where you had to get windows, you had to wind up yourselves, and not even get air conditioning. But in today's day and age, it really is worth taking a look at the base trim to save a few extra dollars. So, what powertrains do we have? The Grand Cherokee is available with 2 tried and true 3.6-liter Pentastar, which is kind of the same engine across the range. It produces 293 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque, and it's also quite common. Or we get the classic 5.7-liter Hemi V8, which produces 357 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque. If you do decide to opt for the V8, it's going to cost you nearly $3,500 extra, so just keep that in mind. They say there's a fuel saver technology in it, and I guess that's the cylinder deactivation where it kind of switches to 4 cylinders. That may be correct, don't quote me on that, but please do correct me if that's somewhat wrong. So, transmission-wise, what do we have? We have an 8-speed automatic transmission, but there are differences. The 3.6-liter gets the 850 RE transmission, and the V8 gets the 8 HP 75. From what I've read on forums, the difference between these transmissions is quite minimal. The only thing is the 8 HP 75 is rated at a higher torque figure and power figure, so it's just made to cope with the higher numbers, from what I know anyway. If you again, more information in the comment section below. Fuel economy ratings for both these engines will be posted on the screen right now. XE model, which is their plug-in hybrid variant, it's available in 5 different trim levels, same across both countries, and mind you, it has quite a significant price hike compared to its gasoline counterpart. Now let's quickly go over the exterior and point out some key features. This generation of Grand Cherokee is visibly boxier and follows the design language usually associated with, well, mid-size crossovers, kind of what we expect in this day and age, compared to its predecessor, which kind of had a rounder design, if that's a good way to describe it. The front proudly displays a 7-slotted grille, which is a nod towards Jeeps of the past, and an extra addition. Also, you have these small retro touches, which you may have seen on other Jeep range. The front is quite busy, housing quite a lot of things, including the front camera system for the surround view, front parking sensors, radar for our driver assist features, a night vision camera, and sensors for the front. I also love what manufacturers are doing these days by adding these satin silver touches instead of that chrome, which can be a little tacky if it's overused, but I really am digging this new satin chrome trim. The headlights are LED by default, but higher trim levels are cited as having a projector beam, which I really did not happen to see. It kind of looked similar to what you get on the base trim, so again, enlighten me. You also get LED high beams, LED turn signals, and LED fog lights. Moving to the side profile, where the Summit Reserve gets 21-inch wheels in this two-tone finish, which really does set the vehicle off and fills the wheel wells in really nicely. You can also get the Reserve in the two-tone color scheme, so if you want the roof to be a different color and the bottom to be, well, it's only really one color for the roof, which is black, but you can't really go crazy like have a pink roof and a yellow bottom, but there are some interesting colors. Additionally, the door mirrors on the side, they're power folding, have the indicator for your blind spot monitoring system, and they also have the camera on the bottom for the surround view, and they have these lights on the bottom as well, which I guess are kind of like welcome lights. Jeep is also known for their legendary off-road prowess, and the Summit offers what Jeep calls the Quadra Drive 2 system, complete with an electronic limited slip differential and a four-wheel drive low setting. Air suspension is also a staple of luxury SUVs, and the Grand Cherokee offers just that in select trim levels. The air suspension can lift the vehicle, and don't quote me on this, 11.3 inches either in total height or off the ground, and it can be seen here in fast motion. There are also some drive modes associated, and I think that's what I saw when I was kind of toggling between different modes, that the vehicle will kind of set itself to the appropriate height based on what setting you are in at the moment based on drive modes. Now to my favorite part of the Summit Reserve, and where I think most of your extra money really goes, the interior. I really don't know where to begin, but I guess we'll begin with the materials used. Virtually everything you see is either aluminum, wood, or metal, and there are some plastics. The leather extends across the whole dash, I believe, down the dashboard, covers the door panels, and even down to the bottom of the door panels, like where the cup holders are. Most people really don't notice that, but it's a nice touch, and most people don't actually care to look there, but I'm glad Jeep actually took the extra time and effort. The center of the dash has this splash of wood that partially covers the door panels and steering wheel too. The seats are perforated with this quilted pattern and even have the Summit logo embossed at the top to let you know what trim level you opted for. You also have this subtle dark piping on the top and bottom. The front seats are also massaging, activated by the switch on the door panel, and you can see we have these moving membranes within the seats that kind of like that give you the massage, I guess. Even the headrests are padded in leather, the front and back. That's a really nice touch, which I really like. Even most of the storage cubbies are lined with felt, so they kind of didn't spare any expense loading this thing up with leather. And I should mention that the Summit Reserve does get really nice polymer, I believe it's called leather, which is an upgrade over the Summit. With all that excessive use of leather and wood, you'd think that they'd cover every inch of the interior, but that's really not the case. And this is another area where I think Jeep kind of skimped out. Another area where not only Jeep, but a lot of manufacturers I see skimping out is the steering column, and I've seen this on BMWs, Mercedes. I mean, the rest of the interior is beautiful, it's exquisite, and then you look at the steering column and it's just this cheap plastic. Only manufacturer I've actually seen cover that in leather is Porsche, and even they charge you, I believe it's $750 Canadian, don't quote me on that, to actually cover that in leather. It just adds that extra little bit of touch. Again, not a big deal, but it's just those little touches that make all the difference. But apart from that, the interior is seriously spectacular, and then again, it should be considering the price of this thing. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about screens next, which this Grand Cherokee is not lacking at all. We have 4 screens, excluding like the small screens you find on climate controls. That includes the gauge cluster, infotainment, the passenger display, the rear digital mirror too, which I should mention is an option. It includes a digital rear view mirror, and it includes a heads-up display, and I believe it includes one more small option. The seats are a separate topic of their own, and I can really make a whole video just on the seats alone because they're really that great. They're not only heated, ventilated, they have these nice aluminum, I believe they're aluminum accents on the back. They have lumbar support for both the driver and passenger. Like I mentioned, they are massaging. The center stack, as you can see, is quite simple. On top of the screen, you have some vehicle controls, about 8 buttons or so. so. Below that we have the infotainment display, of course, and below that we have some like a bunch of buttons, but I'm glad we have hard buttons too. And thank you so much, Jeep, for sticking with physical radio controls for the tuning knob and volume knobs. Are so easy to get to. Moving on, after that we have a sea of gloss black trim, which is mainly used to cover the storage places found in the vehicle. The first one includes 2 ports, 2 USB A's and 2 USB Type-C's, an aux port and HDMI port, which is labeled display, so I guess that's for the passenger display, and a 12-volt outlet. Moving on, further reviews the switches for the air suspension and drive modes. Speaking of drive modes, we have 5 to choose from. This includes rock, sand, mud, snow, auto, and snow. I guess these are the ones on the regular model. If you go for something like the Trailhawk, they may implement extra off-road settings. There's cup holders, and below that we have the center console or console armrest, whatever you want to call it. Looking up top, reveals a panoramic sunroof, which is operable and not just stationary. The headliner is wrapped in this very nice suede material, which is a nice luxurious touch as well. Let's go a little more in depth on the screens. The gauge cluster is customizable. You can kind of customize what you want on each corner. It is customizable, so you can kind of choose what you want up top or what you want on the primary display. And there's also, you can bring up the navigation display on the screen as well, which is really nice. If you look above that, we have our heads-up display. It displays our speeds and I guess other information as well. Again, that is part of a additional cost package, at least here in Canada. Next, let's talk about the infotainment, which, as you know, Uconnect is a great system. This one is running Uconnect 5, and as you can see, it's a totally different layout from older Stellantis products, I guess now, or former FCA. As you can see, there's different menus at the bottom. Everything is easily accessible, it's fast, the graphics are crisp, and overall, it's just a great looking system. I have, of course, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is kind of like in every vehicle these days. Next, let's move on to the passenger display. I couldn't get it to turn on for whatever reason. I was trying the infotainment, toggle it on and off, but the screen just wouldn't turn on. But from what I understand, the passenger can kind of send displays to the main display, which is kind of redundant in my opinion, because like the screen is like in arm's reach anyway. Let's talk about the digital rear view mirror. Again, it's digital. There's a camera on the back. It doesn't kind of protrude, so if you have luggage at the back, you can kind of just toggle that on and there won't be any obstructions in your way. Essentially, there are also some buttons at the bottom of the mirror, kind of to adjust brightness. You can kind of move it to the left and right to kind of make it comfortable to whatever your driving position is. Next, let's move on to the back, and I'm glad to report that the materials in the front follow to the rear, and that includes the door panels as well, so that's a really nice touch. We have the speakers for Macintosh audio system. So anyway, we have heated and ventilated seats back here as well, and to indicate, we also have USB ports back here and a full-on household electrical outlet, so you can plug in like a PlayStation back here if you wanted to, or like a microwave, something along those lines. So we have mat pockets behind the seats, obviously. We also have sunshades in the back, which I think are an option too. Speaking of the rear seats, there are 60/40 split folding, and again, this is another area where I will mention that Jeep kind of cut corners, I think, but it's kind of up to your preference. Most luxury SUVs in this price range offer a power down second row, so you kind of go in the trunk, you hold the button down, and it kind of folds the seats down automatically and even brings that up. But in this car, you actually have to pull a lever, which again, look at me, like we're so lazy we can't even pull a switch, but really it's just down to that touch, you know, that extra luxurious touch. Even if you don't use it, it's nice to know that it's there. But again, they fold 60/40 split manners. Even though there's a lot of cargo space with the seats up anyway, if you want some additional cargo for longer items, you can do so by just folding the seats down. So guys, that just about does it on this review. If you did enjoy it, please give it a big thumbs up, consider subscribing, and I will catch you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.